Like all members of Darth Vader's personal fleet, Death Squadron, Darth Needa had a distinguished military career. As we see in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, by the Battle of Coruscant, he was in command of his own Carrack cruiser, and was actually responsible for communicating directly with the Invisible Hand. By the Imperial era, Needa was in command of a Star Destroyer, the Avenger. His ship, as well as Darth Needa himself, participated in a variety of gaffes, which ended up with the Millenium Falcon escaping the planet. First of all, Ozzel jumps the fleet in too close to Hoth, which gives the rebels notice of the forthcoming attack, and they respond by putting up their energy shields. Then, various ships are knocked out by the rebel ion cannon, including Needa's Avenger, and finally, after a long trek through the Hoth asteroid field, the Millenium Falcon successfully escapes from Death Squadron. Unfortunately for Darth Needa, he was ultimately held responsible for the Falcon's escape because, especially after the Executor pulled out, it led the hunt for the vessel and was by far the closest to capturing it. What's more, as the Millenium Falcon pulled that final maneuver where it feigned a cloaking device, the ship it skirted, of course, was the Avenger. So Darth Needa apologizes to Vader, but nonetheless is killed. However, that was just the beginning of things. Not only did Vader punish the Imperial officer himself, as we learned in Book 2 of the X-Wing series, he actually eliminated all of Needa's family, or at least his close family members. In Wedge's Gamble, we learn of Virar Needa, who has basically the worst job that can be given to an Imperial Navy officer, which is manning one of Coruscant's orbital mirrors. They have literally nothing to do and basically just sit around playing cards the entire time. Although Virar has a sort of twisted sense of self-worth, it's essentially a dead-end job and a killing of a naval career. Nonetheless, Virar, being only Needa's cousin once removed, gets off fairly lightly when compared to Needa's close family. We know that his other cousins, presumably Needa's brothers and sisters, are killed, as are Needa's parents and perhaps even his grandparents. It's like that whole side of the family is wiped out for, let's be honest, a relatively simple mistake. Should Needa have been punished? Well, I guess so. The Avenger technically was running point for the fleet, but I think Admiral Piet ultimately is the one who was responsible for coordinating the fleet. Plus, no one knows how the Falcon actually escaped. If Vader can't point to an error made, I don't think he can claim that Needa was in any way incompetent. It's a waste of not only an Imperial family, but someone who seemed to be, by all other accounts, a relatively skilled officer. Here's Needa's description from the original Star Wars Rebellion era sourcebook. Captain Needa commanded the Star Destroyer Avenger until the fatal mistake that earned him the wrath of Darth Vader. Before that mistake, Avenger was the point ship for one of the most powerful space fleets ever assembled. Needa, ruthless and efficient, had distinguished himself in the Outer Rim and as one of Admiral Ozzel's top advisors in Death Squadron. I do also wonder whether the latter portion, i.e. Captain Needa giving advice to Ozzel, may have tied into his eventual death. We know Vader was extremely unhappy with Ozzel, who really caused this whole situation in the first place. That being said, Death Squadron is Vader's fleet. He's handpicked some of the best and brightest. When you kill an Imperial officer like this, you're essentially throwing away decades of training and experience, while also killing the most naturally skilled individuals. And Vader's approach here is basically the exact opposite to that of Thrawn. In both canon and legends, Myth-Rod Roto has shown an extreme reluctance to kill or even cruelly discipline members of his crew. In canon, we know that people actually enjoyed working on Thrawn's ship, and that getting trust of his crew was extremely important to him. Even in Legends, Thrawn would only kill an Imperial crew member if it was absolutely clear that they had made an irredeemable mistake, which could not have been saved by better oversight or training. Anyway, this is the only situation I could think of where Vader not only killed an Imperial officer, but struck out in retaliation against their family. Obviously, he's complicit in the deaths of Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, but that's completely different. But if if this wasn't the first or last time he did something like this, I'm interested to hear. It should also be noted that although killing subordinates wasn't common, Vader's grandson, Kaidus, was also known to kill people who failed him, and it was a big deal when he snapped the neck of his personal aide. He also threatened to ruin people's career if they didn't listen to his increasingly violent orders, which is sort of something we see with Needa's cousin. Today's question comes from Mr. Mab91, who asks whether I think a combined droid/clone army would have been more or less effective than the sum of its parts. And I do think a combined droid army makes a lot of sense. First of all, a lot of resources goes into making clones. We know that only a few million were ready for the Clone Wars, and each one was a pretty significant investment of both time and research. B1s, on the other hand, could be pumped out, but lack the capacity to really effectively do the sort of higher range functions that you could get with clones. I'm talking everything from piloting starfighters to working in a special forces capacity to serving as the officer on a capital ship. So I think in my perfect army, we have a pretty serious clone corps. However, they work mostly as officers, and I mean both on ground and in space, as pilots, should droid starfighters not be available, as sort of low to high level special forces groups, and just generally in situations where a human or cloned human touch is needed. Droids, on the other hand, would be cannon fire on both space and ground. As you have clone squads working your way and doing precise maneuvers, the B1s are basically throwing themselves at the enemy. And I really do think the two factions will complement each other, so the combination of strength and skill, especially if you add in the Jedi, I think would be very, very dangerous. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this question down below. If there's something you'd like to see me answer at the end of a future video, leave it in the comments with the hashtag AskEck. Make sure you also subscribe and turn notifications on. You know what? There's not that many of you who do that, so if I do answer your question, you will get to see it. Anyway, until next time guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.